I always tell this to, new folks, especially people who are a little bit junior on the team. Organizations are often hesitant to just unlock more salary and compensation, but they are often very open to unlocking additional responsibility. Look for opportunities to take things on. If you want to start signaling that you have untapped potential or the ability or the desire to level up in certain ways, start looking around for things that you might be able to own and drive, even if you don't have the perfect playbook. In fact, I would encourage you to say, I don't have the perfect playbook, but I'm really interested in getting it.
It's Slackers, unscripted business insight from two lifelong builders. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Jaime, and we are here to show you how big ideas travel across industries.
Consider it your weekly companion on a path to better work and a better way of working.
When you've worked in enough places, you start to realize something. Not all top performers perform the same way. You see, some people are rock solid. They keep things organized, on track, predictable. These are often high floor people. But some other people, they totally redefine what good even means. You see, they see around corners. They solve problems before anyone else even notices them. And they often operate at a level that lifts everyone nearby. Those are high ceiling people. High floor people, well, they keep the foundation of your skyscraper rock solid. High ceiling people, they change the way the whole skyline looks for your team or your organization. The question is, how do you tell the difference? And once you spot those people, how do you build a culture where both can thrive? That's what we're getting into today, how to identify different types of performers, develop them, and build systems that unlock new value for them and for everyone around them. So, hey, Jonathan, good to see you, man. Always a pleasure. When you think about high floor, high ceiling talent, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I think, we do tend to think of people in general as like really good or mediocre or not great. It's a sliding scale that we just think kind of lives. You're either all the way to the right or all the way to the left or somewhere in between. And I think the premise of high ceilings and high floors or low floors and low ceilings, as we look at, this is commonly used in a kind of in the sports analogies and sports world sometimes, but in our lives, in the corporate world and in just the general lanes we swim in, we bump into folks all the time that kind of fit these profiles. And sometimes we see these as like different like personality mixes, and like there's different ways to profile people on some of their emotional intelligence and their actual intelligence and all kinds of things. But when we look at the high ceiling and high floor and vice versa, it can really kind of indicate, one, high ceilings is typically an indicator of potential, right? Well, like how much potential does this person have? And when they have a really high ceiling, we tend to look at that as being like unlimited potential. Like sky is the limit for these people. It's like as fast as they can consume information and get knowledge and collaborate with other people, they're just going to go up and up and up and up and up. And high floor people are typically very experienced people. Plenty of experience under their belt. They've got life experiences and work experiences they draw off of. They've built routines and processes that they use, and they understand how to operate at a high level from a production standpoint, but maybe have already kind of hit their max potential as far as how high they're going to go. And sometimes we look at, the opposite of that, right? Which we say, if you have a low floor and a high ceiling, oftentimes that might mean you're a junior person with a ton of potential. You don't have a lot of experience. You haven't built a lot of processes and things that you really know how to wield, tools in your box that you know how to use really well. But you're in the process of not only raising your floor, but trying to chase your ceiling, right? That's what we see a lot of junior talent is kind of lives in that lane. And we see a lot of our, more experienced senior talent can sometimes be a mix, but that's where you get kind of the high floor, low ceiling folks that have been in their lane for a long time and they just are money, right? As you mentioned kind of in the beginning there, it's like, these are the folks you can count on, you can depend on them, you know exactly what they're going to produce. They rarely surprise you with out of the blue ideas that are like these step function changes. But if you gave, Bob on the second floor a big pile of work, he's going to chew through it at the end of the week every single time. And so I think for some of us, it's recognizing this, who are we when you look at ourselves, like where do we fit in this? And, across our teams, some of the colleagues that we work with, like how are the different people kind of, how do they function in the team? Like where's their ceilings and floors and how do we assess that? And as a leader, you might look across your organization too, is be like, how do I create the right mix of these things in order to get the best possible result? Because I think we could all agree that if you have a low floor and a high ceiling, you have tons of them, it's really difficult to be successful because you got all these ideas coming from every direction, yet nobody knows how to really execute very well. And that's sometimes where like all junior teams can really struggle sometimes because they're full of ideas, but have a really hard time executing on a consistent basis. And on the other hand, too, if you have a whole bunch of high floor people, you can get a lot of work done, but your roadmap might be kind of boring. You might not have a lot of stretch goals. And you're looking at like, yep, this is the most repeatable, predictable thing we can do every single week. And we hit our KPIs right on the nose and away we go. But you don't get a whole lot of the like, wouldn't it be awesome if kind of statements from groups like that. So it's a very interesting thing to explore. It's a challenge for all of us to kind of reflect ourselves. Where do we fit in this? And then also starting to think about how do the different people in my life fit into these kind of buckets? And then what does that mean? How do I interact with them? How do I get the most out of those relationships? And maybe how do I tune my own experiences to align with that?
Yeah, I think for my sake, and maybe part of this is like just getting a disclosure out of the way at the top of like the pod here. It's going to be really difficult for me, I think, to not just want to keep falling back to like sports metaphors or some version of like a music or a band metaphor. But, nested in all of that is really like, why the hell are we talking about this today? Like, why is this even a topic that's on our mind? I'm going to put an assertion out there and say, like, one of the reasons I think we wanted to talk about this is because many times you and I we've been hired as individuals. We've been hired as members of teams working together to go in and sometimes help organizations or teams just figure out how to deliver, I'm doing air quotes here, better, whatever the definition of better is. And one of those kind of key pillars, or at least an area that I feel like we have consistently poked at in that work, is just evaluating the makeup of the team. Just like a coach would look at the lineup, would look at the roster, and make strategic decisions around who belongs in what role based on what they're bringing to the table. Sometimes I think you and I end up talking about this topic because it's super surprising that more organizations and companies and teams and all that sort of stuff don't talk about this. Like, it certainly wasn't a part of any onboarding I ever had beyond here's what we brought you in under this title with this stack of bullet things that we said is your job responsibility. But I don't think I ever had any manager or somebody in a leadership position go, hey, by the way, part of the experience here is as we get to know each other and how we go through the exercise of working together, we're going to figure out exactly, how to shape the roster, not only for yourself, but around you, because we're trying to do the following things and we're trying to do them this way. That doesn't seem to occur all that often, at least in my experience. I mean, do you feel like you bump into that, or have you had a different experience with that?
No, and I do think this is why this comes up a lot in our own conversations, right? Like whether we're talking about it in context with this podcast or the show, or in our personal lives and our personal communications about things, is that it does come up a lot because it is a really helpful way to understand, like, how can we just be more successful? Like we all talk about like force multipliers and all these things. It's like the right ingredients often produce, just a much better result. But you're right. I mean, it's really rare, to be part of an organization or to join an organization, whether you're coming in as a consultant or a new employee or just a member of the team, whatever it may be. It's pretty rare. There was like, oh, this is Jaime over here. And this is like, he's a real high ceiling guy. He's big ideas just flow out of him like crazy. Got a real high floor too. So you can really count on him to knock stuff out. And over here, we got Jonathan. He's one of these. It's like, we don't really have that conversation really. And we don't look across the team, typically as in a really transparent way. Sometimes you might have a leader who like in the back of their mind is kind of like trying to assess these things, but it is rare that it's kind of like an open conversation about opportunity and team chemistry and culture. And a lot of the things that will tie back to this is that if your proportions are off, you may not even realize it. You just may not know, like, why does this team over here struggle to produce great results, but this team over here is just killing it. And they seem to be kind of similar, but usually if you pick at it just enough, you realize you're like, oh, there's actually a balance here of like these visionary, high horsepower folks with some real high floor performers that can run alongside them and really get a lot of work done and in the right way. Very recently, I've had an experience where I was working with a company who had a lot of really high ceiling folks, but really low floors. and they were trying to figure out like, why aren't we producing as much as it seems like we should? These seem like really talented folks. Like, what's going on? And as you look across the team, it became pretty clear that the floors just hadn't raised for enough of these people to produce meaningful work. The ideas were abundant, ideas everywhere, like all over the place, whiteboards full of ideas, all their documentation, ideas, but not a lot of execution and not a lot of definition, and the hard work that the people on our teams with real high floors are always exceptional at. Right, the detail, the work, the effort. A lot of these pieces, like, I know how to do this. I've done this a million times. I'm going to get exactly this thing knocked out, and we're going to get closer to that big vision that we've all kind of aspired to. And yet, so often that mix is off, and then you sit there and scratch your head, going like, it feels like we have, like, individually, we have a lot of talented people here, but it's just not working. And a lot of times you just start replacing pieces because you're not really sure what the right mix is, because you're not really looking at it the right way. And as a result, you keep building these imbalanced teams that are not producing the results that you want.
What's funny in hearing you kind of recite a little bit about that recent experience that you've had, which definitely resonates, is I think maybe part of what we're pitching here in this conversation is the tactical exercise of kind of trying to audit your altitude, whether it's floor or ceiling, as an individual. So that's kind of, maybe move number one, do a self audit. Where do I think I am in that mix of stuff? Where do I think I kind of land on that, in that matrix? And then also to kind of look to your left, look to your right, look around you, and do that same exercise. So whether you are the member of the team, or you are the one building and leading the team, both of those pieces are kind of valuable places to start, just from like an exercise point of view. What's the self audit, and can I go do that audit with the people around me?
Yeah. And I would say too, seek out the opinions of the people that you're working with as well, right? Like, self-reflection is really important. Like, what do I think? Like, what kind of a performer am I? Like, where do I live in this? And then challenge that with your leadership, with your teammates and other things, in a kind of an open way of just being like, hey, I kind of feel like I'm this kind of a person. I'm an idea person who can kind of get stuff done, but if it's up to me to get everything done, we're probably going to drop the ball somewhere. And someone else might be like, hey man, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Right. Like, we have plenty of those folks that are just awesome. We all love them. Real high ceiling folks love the real high floor folks that say, just give it to me and let's go. Right. Like those are great combinations. But yeah, I think that validation of just kind of like what you think you are and kind of where you are and maybe what you aspire to be. And then having that conversation with either leadership or teammates or whatever, so that you can kind of validate a little bit about how you feel you place in that lane somewhere.
And something that I also want to make sure I get out into the air here, just to try to be specific and clear, is not necessarily trying to cast a judgment on one type being better than or more than or whatever than the other. But I know I have certainly experienced the tension and the stress on teams when an individual or an entire team's aspirations don't align with their abilities, where there has been a disconnect with, to what degree are we honest with our own capabilities and abilities, whether it's on a per project thing or whatever, but we're still going to go to work every day and operate like we are this other type of individual. And that gets really tricky to navigate, because you can work with some really great people, but if you start to tune into that frequency and you realize like, oh, there's a misalignment here, suddenly you're in a really interesting scenario at work where it's, how can I try to course correct and maybe make an adjustment here? How can I recalibrate this thing without feeling like I'm crushing someone's spirit or soul, or squashing their identity because they clearly perceive themselves or believe themselves to be a certain type of person, and maybe they are in some other capacity, in some other way, but they've brought that version of themselves to the project or to the team or to the company. And you, perhaps as a leader, have to have that conversation going, oh boy, I think it's time to recalibrate things here, and I have to navigate that. A tricky bit in there is, how do I do that? Because I'm not trying to tell them that the bundle of skills and attributes that they've showed up with today aren't valuable and needed and meaningful. We're just we're putting them in the wrong spot, is what it is, which I'm acknowledging is very different than somebody who's clearly not a fit, a toxic kind of ingredient for a whole lot of other reasons. Those aren't the same thing. So you don't want to like lump that together. But still, that's a tricky bit to figure out.
Yeah. I think the really important part you just said there is that it's not a level of goodness of like if you have a high floor or a high ceiling or some combination of those things. It doesn't necessarily say, well, this is a good employee and this is a less good employee or teammate or leader or whatever, right? It's just, I think the important part of the conversation here is that you need a certain mix in order to achieve the best results. You know, the one we haven't really touched on yet is the low floor, low ceiling. And now a lot of times in just kind of like corporate world, we don't run into that a lot, frankly, because typically in order to kind of start moving up the ranks somewhere, you either need to have the ability to lift your floor or the ability to kind of pivot and raise your ceiling somewhere to become, you know, in one of those lanes. But sometimes it just means that too, is that, and you touched, I think you mentioned this even just when you were just talking, is that you might have a high ceiling in a different lane. Maybe I have a really high ceiling as a musician, but my ceiling in the corporate world is much lower than that. Like I don't know where to begin. I might actually be a high floor performer in a different environment. And I think that's important because it also can even just mean inside your own organization, maybe, is that you might have the ability to unlock something if just placed in a different environment. You know, we see that sometimes too, where someone's like, oh, my floor has approached my ceiling and I'm kind of just like a doer now. However, I might pivot into a different part of the company, a different organization entirely, maybe in a different career. Like I'm just going to change my career. I'm going to go chase a dream. And by chasing a dream, you almost automatically have a high ceiling because like, you know, dreams and high ceilings are often connected pretty closely, right? And so the people who are like, I'm going to go chase my dreams almost always have a high ceiling. They might not have the high enough floor to go pursue that on their own, but that's like a big indicator of where that ceiling might be as someone who's like, I aspire to do amazing things and I'm going to go do them in this way. And like, great, your ceiling is sky high, but I may not have developed the skills yet to have a floor that lets me perform. Again, as a leader, as a teammate, as part of an organization, whatever it might be, is that if you're happy having, let's say, a high floor and a low ceiling, like this satisfies me. I come into work, I know what I'm supposed to do, I'm really good at it. And the dreamers on my team are never providing a shortage of work. This is awesome. It nourishes me to do this. That's a home run, right? Like that's a win for all sides. That person's happy going to work. The organization's happy to have them. The team's probably super stoked to have them on their team. It's a win across the board. And yet they may have already bumped into their ceiling, and yet it's the perfect situation for them and for the organization that they're part of.
So completely agree. I think I am certainly biased because of time spent in the trenches of technology and software development oriented organizations and things like that, where you start to wrap archetypes around some of these people, or certain disciplines seem to present more often than not in some of these ways. And I'm acknowledging that that's probably a bias. So I don't mean to pick on any one particular role or discipline, but it is funny, I think, how often working with, let's just say, software engineers, how that can sometimes turn into an interaction with other people in an organization where they are not a part of the engineering team and they're super frustrated with the way the engineers are operating, or one or two or three guys or gals who are on that team. And they're like, why don't they just see what we're trying to get out of this project? Can't they like see the result down the line? Like, why are we stuck in this thing? And I'm like, man, I think that frustration is super valid. I think the engineering mindset sometimes, and obviously I'm not trying to just use a broad sweeping kind of blanket statement for all of those different types of people who have those types of skills. But it is funny how lots of times I think you work with really talented software engineers who are like, dude, you can count on me. Do you understand like how valuable I am? Because I'm here day in and day out doing the thing that I was assigned to do. Like my tickets are closed, man. Like my stuff is ready to be QA'd. It's good. Like I did not sign up for the vision quest. Like I signed up to come here and be your trusted and reliable, resource today and tomorrow and the day after that. And that's what I need out of, my kind of work identity. And I think that's kind of what I'm good at. And I'm super happy. And other people are like, that's not what I thought an engineer does. I'm like, well, not all of them. and that obviously that conversation goes both ways, because there's plenty of engineers who show up and they're like, dude, I just baked this thing over the weekend. I've got this, like this, I'm going to fundamentally change the whole business because I have this whole new thing. So it can certainly flow both ways, but I'm always amazed at how difficult it can be for people who work in other functional disciplines to not only bring a little bit of intentional, purposeful empathy to the table as they look at their interactions with their colleagues, but also kind of miss that piece where you go, no, that person might be playing the role they are absolutely meant to play in this organization, and that's okay. And we have to now think about how we're going to expand our ability as wayfinders in this organization to go solve the problem we're trying to solve with some other resources, some other inputs, and go collect some other tools to go do the thing. But let's not spend too much over here trying to change this individual into something that they are not, here to be, if that makes any sense at all.
It's funny. I while you were talking about that, it reminded me, it's been a while, maybe even 10 years ago. It was one of the organizations I was at, excuse me. And we were doing performance reviews, right? The bane of all corporate existence. I don't think anybody likes doing performance reviews. Some people don't even really like getting them, although we associate them with raises a lot. So I think that's why everybody kind of demands them. But I digress. So I'm going through the performance reviews, and for the first time in my life, and this is, like I said, 10, 15 years ago, I was talking to somebody and I was like, great. So, where do you want to go in the company, in your life, in your career? Like what, where are you trying to get? Let me help you get there. And like, oh, I'm good. I'm like, oh, but I mean, like, what do you want to do next? Like, what's like the next thing? Like, what do you aspire to? And like, no, I'm good. And I didn't even understand the response in the moment, right? Because
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that breaks the brain. Like, I thought we came to this conversation to talk about like the next steps down the road.
Yeah, I was like, my whole perspective on things has always been like, just, keep growing. You've got a high ceiling, go try and catch it, right? Do whatever you can to get there. And this guy's like,
maybe you didn't understand what I said.
Yeah. And the guy's like, no, man. Like I'm really good. Like, I like my job. I like doing what I'm doing. I mean, yeah, a little more money be cool or whatever, but like, I don't want to be in a different role. Like, I like my role. And if I could just do this for like ever, that's cool too. And it kind of shocked me, like, in a way, because I'm just like, part of me wanted to be like, well, let's tease this out. Like, let's figure out where you really want to go. But the other part of me was like, yeah, this person's actually like really content. They don't lose sleep at night because they don't have all this stuff swirling around in their head about the stuff that they can't achieve or that they're trying to do, or like all these missed opportunities or whatever. There's like, no, I get here at like 9 and I have a list of stuff to do. And then at 5, I leave, even if that stuff's not done. And then tomorrow when I get here, I'll keep working on that list. And then somebody will give me more stuff to do. And it's great.
You start questioning your own aspirations. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, like, I didn't even know that was an option, really, right. To just do, like, I just like my job. And I'm okay if I just do this forever.
Like, that's right.
I mean, growing up, right? Like my parents, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, these were people that had the same job their whole life. And maybe they didn't change much. Like, they were like, I got my job. It pays the bills. I did that till I retired. And then that was it. I enjoyed my life after that. And yet, to me, to bump into somebody who was like in their 20s, who was just like, I'm good. Like, I'm good. And I was like, in retrospect, right? These are the people that have a really high floor and yet almost no ceiling. Like, they are the same. That plane they have reached that level, and good for them, because they were happy with their job. They were happy with their team. They loved the people who gave them tons of stuff to do, because they're just like, I know there'll be an ever growing list of things to do. And I enjoy working through that list. And it's moments like that when you do realize, and for those of us, who bump into this like daily, it's just like, you have to appreciate that person's role. And like you said before, it's not better or worse or bad or good or anything like that. But that person is not going to appreciate you challenging them to bring great big ideas to the table first thing in the morning or at the end of the day or whatever else it might be. And they might struggle if they're paired with a whole bunch of people just like them, because who's bringing us the work? Who's validating that work? Who's explaining that work to us? Who's pitching the dream that we're helping to achieve here? But if you don't understand those dynamics and you're not really sure what's kind of like motivating some of these folks and what their tendencies tend to be, it is actually really easy to have a team totally off balance that is just not operational. And on the surface, it starts looking like, oh, we got to hire different people, or we got to get rid of some of these people, or whatever else it might be. It's like, what do we do? the answer really is like, get to know your team a little bit better and kind of understand like where do they sit in relation to all of this, right? Like, are they doers and producers who have, developed these skills over time? They know what they're doing and that's what they want to do. It's really unappealing to them to have wayfinders and dreamers be like, no, you got to dream big, man. You got to shoot for the moon. You got to do all these things. They're like, I have no desire to go to the moon, man. Like, I just like getting up and doing my job and then just go home and like enjoy my life. Like, that's cool. And people on both sides of that sometimes struggle to understand the other side. Like we've talked about before, like, why do people with $1 billion go to work today? Like, or tens of billions or hundreds of billions. Like, why are they going to work right now and doing stuff when they could just punch out? And it's because their ceiling is so high. I need to get to Mars, dude. Like, I can't be out here watching TV tonight. Like, I'm trying to get to Mars, right? Like those kinds of things to a high floor individual who has reached their ceiling, that is incomprehensible that anybody would even aspire to do that.
That's right. And I mean, aside from a conversation like that in performance review, like making your brain like break and having you question reality and feeling like the axis of the universe is somehow off kilter. I mean, it's a really important reminder that it's probably impossible to achieve anything if we're not willing to really do an honest assessment of the skills and the resources and the talent and the attributes that our team members are bringing to the table, and accept that we are looking for a colorful, diverse box of crayons. Like tonight at some point, my wife and I will cook dinner. In my kitchen drawer, I do not have a universal kitchen tool that does every single thing I will need to do tonight to make dinner happen. There is not one tool that lets me open the can and also whisk in the butter and also, put this amount of, water in a pot and do these things. Like, there is no one master tool that does it all. Like, my kitchen drawer is a collection of very specific tools to do very specific things. That if I get thoughtful around what I'm trying to make for dinner tonight, and I think about what approach I need to have to the meal, I'm going to start selecting those tools based on ultimately the kind of dinner I'm hoping to achieve. Many times, we do seem to kind of miss that assessment as leaders or people who are building teams and running teams, or as the people who are on the teams being able to assess like ourselves and who's to the left of us and who's to the right of us. So incredibly valuable exercise, an incredibly obvious dynamic, I think, once you sort of see it, not to keep picking on engineers, but the number of times I've had a conversation with a very senior engineer who suddenly finds himself in a leadership and management position because the organization has been, man, you're ready for it. You've been here. We're going to pluck you up. And now, yeah, you're not banging away at code every day, but you are in charge of these 10 people who are. How many conversations I've had with people like that who are going, I don't know how to do this. And in fact, I don't think I'm the right person to go do this, even though I've been, here X amount of years and I have this kind of depth of expertise. Suddenly I'm struggling now that I'm in a position where I'm in charge of managing people. I've had that conversation loads of times. But it also makes me want to ask you, aside from an example like that, are there symptoms you look for? Or what are even the symptoms of a team that might be struggling with some of these things that aren't always noticed? And I'll kind of just lob one out. I won't, unpack it. But for example, something that stands out to me as a symptom of that's beaconing like, oh, I might want to tune into this, is starting to pay attention to how people flag problems. Like, what is the process somebody goes through when they identify a potential problem or an issue? Because there's sort of a version of how that happens with some individuals. There's version one, which is, hey, everybody, there's a problem over here. Bye. And then we leave. And that's sort of, they came away going like, that was my job. I did my job. And then there's maybe the extreme other end, which is, hey, I think I noticed a problem. Here's what I think it is. I kind of did this assessment of it. And by the way, based on that, I kind of did these things. And I just wanted to let you know that this has occurred. That's a very different kind of approach to a problem. That first example of, hey guys, I noticed something's probably broken. I'll talk to you guys later. That to me, you start to pick up on that. You go, oh shoot, we may need to just take a thoughtful look at the roster, because I'm not sure I'm assessing who's doing what in their particular lanes as well as I should have been. Does that even make sense?
It does. Let me try to answer it in a couple different ways here. So like, let's take a look at like when you have a team, an imbalanced team. And imbalanced teams are the ones where you start to identify like something's just not working quite right. A real example of this is similar to the one I was talking about before, which is you have a whole team full of people with really high ceilings and maybe low floors. A symptom of that is lots and lots and lots of ideas, but almost never really delivering. And oftentimes it presents itself as a lot of excuses. It's not that we tried this thing, we learned some stuff, we're going to do some new stuff. It's like we think our ideas are actually really good and they're not working because of all these things out of our control, because they don't really have a good feel for what might correct some of the results that they're seeing. And so you often tend to get, and again, oftentimes this is indicative of like junior teams with a lot of potential, right? They are the high ceiling, low floor crowd. And what you hope, if you have that, is that there's enough people in that group who can raise their floor quickly that the group starts to perform a little bit better and they start to deliver and things like this. But when it doesn't happen, it's the most common symptom is, I thought you guys were going to achieve this and that didn't happen. What's going on? And they're like, oh, Google did this and Facebook did this. And somebody changed a bunch of the rules. And like, oh, we had this competitor that came out of nowhere. It's very little about what did we do or what could we have done to produce a better outcome. It's a lot of kind of like the outside world disrupted us. And yet our vision and our dream is as good and as valid as it was ever before. And so you have to kind of pick up on those things because again, that, touching a little bit on like the problem here might've been like, hey guys, the outside world is after us, like we're getting attacked on all sides and we just have to weather this storm because our ideas are definitely good. The symptom there is like just not even acknowledging that there might have been a process breakdown, a delivery breakdown, a deliverable that got missed, the right response to the outside pressure instead of just being like a thing happened. It was like, well, what did you do in response to that thing? Low floor people often do not know what could have caused that, right? So a lot of times it's just reacting to like somebody did a bad thing to us and well, let's just hope that doesn't happen next quarter kind of a thing, right? And there's a lot of that when you look at the imbalance. You have really high floor, low ceiling people. And a lot of times what happens is they're really good at delivering, but they're not delivering like meaningful things. There's not step function growth. There's not these big pivots. There's not force multipliers going on because nobody's dreaming of, man, if we get all this stuff together, we could, 10x this business in 18 months or whatever. And instead it's just show up, work, do the thing, go home, and then hope that maybe one of these things that we did unlocks some potential that we had no idea was there. And so it's a lot of this, like it's keeping busy, doing lots of stuff, but really just fine tuning. A lot of the knobs are getting turned a little bit left, a little bit right, but there's not like this, like, wow, we doubled our business year over year. Like it's just not happening with that group. They are a sustain, maintain group that's going to be like, we're going to do the right things over and over and over again, but we're not going to do a lot of new stuff. And we're not going to chase anything that seems really impossible because we can just do the things that are right in front of us, right? So those teams can stumble because they're just not, they're just holding the line. There's no inflection point in that group whatsoever. And then there's, then it's just getting the mix wrong, right? Like, so that's all of one or all of the other. And there's symptoms that come out of that. And the same thing will happen with that group is sometimes it'll come out as a bit of an excuse, right? Well, somebody did an amazing thing. We didn't have that on our list of stuff to do. So how could we have done it? Right? Like there's no way that was going to happen. That wasn't even a target we were shooting at. Right? Like, and so you start to mix those things now and you have to find the right balance. Every organization is going to be, do the high ceiling people really power and fuel this business? Or do I need one or two of those and a whole bunch of high floor folks that are going to knock it out? Somebody's going to craft the vision and define the work and start to build the dream. And then the team's coming in behind them to start doing all of that work and knocking it out. And we've all seen when that combination is right, that's when we're like, we crushed it. We hit every milestone we set for ourselves. It made a massive impact to the business. Our competitors are scrambling because they can't believe we delivered this thing so quickly. And it's just on and on and on and on. And the machine's really humming. And oftentimes we'll point to a leader or an individual that's like, that's the reason, right? Like that one person is the reason why the things were amazing. And the reality was, it's probably because you had exactly the right mix of people who were documenting the dreams and the other people who are executing the work that's coming out of that in the right amount of balance that you're able to be like, this is going to be a stretch goal. We're going to have a really hard time doing this. And yet everybody falls in line and you knock it out month after month, quarter after quarter. It keeps happening. And most of the time we see that happen. It's luck. It's just like the right combination of people ended up on a team. And how many times as a leader, manager, whatever, gone back and be like, we have to figure out how to duplicate this team because this team seems really good. But what is it about the team, right? Like, is it the fact that there's a mass of dreamers that are creating all this opportunity for the few people to come do the work? Or maybe it's the inverse of that. But going back to sports real quick, as you said, it's going to be tough to stay away from sports, is that when you see those teams that are assembled with a quality player, let's say on the team, who's exceptional in their role, right? They're not necessarily the greatest player in the organization or the greatest player in the league or whatever else it might be, but they're really good in that role. So if let's say you stick basketball, I've got a really good point guard. I got a really good shooting guard. I've got two really good wings playing forward. I got a center that's remarkable. And then I've got people off the bench that can easily replace those to react to whatever comes our way. And away we go. Versus like, I got Michael Jordan and we're winning no matter what, right? Like, and early on in Michael Jordan's career, that was really hard. Didn't win a lot of playoff games, right? It wasn't until the people who were exceptional in their role started to show up that then the person who believed that they could achieve ultimate greatness was a superpower, because now you had all the people around who believed it and were willing to go to work and go do that. Now Michael Jordan had people with very high floors, and he's going, guys, there's no reason anybody should beat us. We're going to go out here and win every game we play, and we're going to win championship after championship. And they were like, okay, like that sounds like a good plan. This guy seems like he has a really good idea, and we're capable of doing the work that's required of us. Great, let's go win 6 champions in a row while he's here. Yet we all kind of look and be like, oh, I'm Michael Jordan. He was the reason. But Michael Jordan wasn't the reason in 1989. Michael Jordan was the reason once all of the role players were able to really be strong in what they did and to be able to collaborate with a dreamer that was as intense and visionary as he was. And we see it with Apple. We see it with other organizations where we point to this leadership person or the big idea person, like they're the reason that this whole organization was wildly successful. But really we have to say is that they assembled the team that could take advantage of the fact that their dreams were attainable if you associate them and align them with all of the people who can make that dream possible, not just a whole bunch of other dreamers who are going to try and outdream the other people. And we see those organizations all the time, and they tend to flame out pretty quick, which is they're boiling the ocean. They got every idea you could think of, and yet they cannot zero in on the most meaningful thing that they could do and have the people who can actually deliver that be assigned to that task. And so what happens is you flame out with a huge roadmap that never really saw any realization to it.
I was trying hard. I made it this far without the sports stuff. I mean, you got there first, so I feel like a little bit better. It's absolutely worth noting that there are some of our time cultural components that are in play here. One of them being, we love the hero's story. Like, just culturally, we want to celebrate like the idea of the singular hero or the heroine of the tale. So we have a natural tendency to try to find patterns in those types of stories, like the Michael Jordans of Pick Your Field, the Steve Jobs of Pick Your Field. We have a natural tendency to want to just feel and process that type of a story through one individual. It's just easier. So I guess kind of what I'm saying is it's worth acknowledging that we're kind of biased to see the world that way, anyway. But slight counterpoint, they make more than one type of sports movie. And there's a fairly robust lane of sports movies where the entire success story is about the leader, the coach, the whatever's ability to build the team. I think of Miracle, right? The hockey movie about the Olympic, hockey team that beats, the USSR or Russia at the time, whatever they were called. I mean, I love that movie. Kurt Russell blows a whistle back and forth across the ice. It's hard not to love that movie for me. I'm not even the biggest hockey guy, but I love it. But I mean, that's a story about assembling the team. And I mentioned that not just because, gosh, I like that movie and it's easy to talk about, but leadership is not excused from this conversation at all. Just by virtue of saying, hey, yeah, I've thought about this topic, Jonathan and Jamie, and I get it. It's important. The job of leadership, beyond just acknowledging perhaps that these dynamics exist and that perhaps this topic is important, is that you have to really create the conditions to kind of identify these individuals and these types of teams purposely, and accept that most of those folks don't know where they are in that soup of stuff. So putting some thought into how can I create conditions around here for people to feel comfortable exploring what it's like to be a high ceiling person. And then I'm not going to get clipped early on for raising my hand in the meeting and kind of saying, well, what about this? Which might be this total stretch idea. Step one in being able to even get to that point is creating conditions where somebody feels like that's a comfortable exercise to take on. That's a risk that they can take on without killing themselves. And I'm trying to, I guess, articulate the role of leadership in purposely engineering environments that allow people to explore their potentials in different ways. Because on one hand, you have the story of, you being in the performance review and somebody being like, no, I'm good, which, wow, it's incredible. That's probably also not the entire roster of people who have incredibly high floors. There's probably lots of people with high floors who, to your other point about, hey, this is just kind of what I do, and you can count on me. Some of what's wrapped up in that value being the most reliable, dependable person is also the security that's into that. It's just less scary to show up and take those types of shots and take those types of public risks or bets or open your mouth and make an assertion in front of a room. So leaders who want to explore these areas, I would lob that out as something to consider. Look around at the way you run your meetings. Look at the behaviors you celebrate as an organization. Are you signaling that it's okay to explore some of these areas? Because ideally, not only are we being thoughtful about assembling I guess pick your metaphor, like a box of crayons or a kitchen drawer full of diverse tools to go accomplish your task, you also need to be aware that there's an enormous amount of opportunity in helping people, wherever they sit on that matrix, become something else. So how do I help the high ceiling person who has a kind of a low floor, maybe because they are junior? How do I coach them up effectively? What conditions need to exist in my workplace to allow that to happen? And then the complementary piece of that is, how do I create a place that people who are absolutely high floor people, that I can start to tease out who's got a higher ceiling than they think they have? How do I coach my way into that team that's able to achieve something greater than the sum of its parts? Because I didn't just build a team full of Michael Jordans. And I guess maybe the one asterisk here that I'll kind of throw out is that same question about looking for symptoms in a team that displays some of these things, where you start to have your antenna go, oh, maybe I should tune into this topic, is also leaders who signal things that I would go, oop, that would make me a little leery. And one of those is you start to realize you're not delivering the thing that you said you were going to be able to deliver. You start to feel anxiety about the project and you want to just throw resources at it. Maybe it's a money thing. Maybe I need to double the engineering team. Maybe these are all the wrong dudes. I need 10 more girls to go do this task over here. It cracks me up because I don't even remember where I heard this analogy, but somebody had said, if you assembled a room full of 50 women and asked them to have a baby more quickly than 9 months, they can't do it. You still are going to have to take 9 months, no matter how many women are trying to collectively achieve having a baby. And that's something that I see leadership be guilty of often. It's almost like a lazy kind of way to approach the problem. It's like, I'm not really going to peel back the layers here of how my team is constructed. Instead, I'm going to try to just cover it in resources, or I'm going to start, can I spend my way out of it? Can I have a whole new roster of talent come on to do this? Or I'm pretty sure I got 5 other Michael Jordans over here, and that's what the team needs. It needs all of these type of people to come squeeze. I guess I sort of zigzagged my way through trying to explore what leadership and management's role is in this entire ecosystem. On one hand, trying to help people and not be guilty of some sins.
Yeah, I think there are some things, leaders can really do to try and help, to your point, right? Like, you might have people who've exhibited a high floor. They seem to have hit their ceiling, but maybe you don't know. Right? Like, I haven't really given the opportunity to really try this because they're Mr. or Mrs. Dependable, and we just do that all the time. Same thing on the other side, right? The high ceiling, low floor person, junior person. Like, how do they raise their floor if that's one of their weaknesses, right? Is that's just where it is, right? And so I think what we find is oftentimes you need to match people up, right? So that somebody who is approaching their ceiling gets to work alongside of somebody that has a really high ceiling, and they get to see those behaviors. And it's either going to spark some excitement and interest, or they're going to be like, glad I'm not that person. I'm fine being where I'm at, right? Like, that's good. And same thing with the junior person, right? Like, this is not some big revelation to match junior people with senior people, but the idea that you have a high ceiling junior person with a low floor, if you can match them with a high ceiling person with a high floor, they get an opportunity to learn some behaviors that will help them tremendously, because they're going to align with the let's do a moonshot kind of approach, whatever that may be. But they're also going to be like, but this person they always do everything they say they're going to do. They always meet their commitments. They'll grab the extra task to knock out. It's not just sit here and dream all day and assume that somebody's going to do all the work. That's a skill you have to kind of develop and figure out, like, how do I become productive in this? Whether it's even just defining the dream, right? I just have to be more articulate about what my vision is here so the rest of the team can help. And those high ceiling, high floor people are not just the big dreamers, but they can hand you a blueprint too. Not only do I dream of making an amazing dinner tonight, but I'm also going to give you the recipe. Here you go, team. But I still need people who can do all this stuff. But I'm gonna be really prescriptive about how to go achieve this vision that we have. And to the team, that feels good. To leadership, that seems awesome. As like, it feels like everything's kind of moving. And that sometimes can be as a leader, you need to give people an opportunity to see, like, is there a ceiling here that we're just not aware of, that they might, if we get them in the right room with the right people, does it suddenly pop up and they're just like, wait, give me the pen to the whiteboard. Let me go. And they're like, oh, that we've never seen that before. Like, we might need to tap into that. Or, somebody watching somebody behave in a way that they say, like, I want to be that. Like, I thought I was this big visionary, but I realize that if I can't get this floor up, I'm not going to be very valuable to my organization, because I'm going to have people just running around. That's where we get real thrashy. We've all been in the organization with a visionary person who just changes their mind all the time. And it's very fatiguing to the rest of the team to be like, what are we doing today that's new? I thought we were all pointed this direction last week, and we show up on Monday and you want us to go run the other way. Like, why? And like, well, I have a new dream. You're like, okay, that at some point that's not good enough. Like, I need the recipe to what we're trying to do here. Because if you're just going to show up every Monday morning with a brand new dream, what's going to happen? We're just going to start tuning you out, because that is very disruptive. It's difficult for us, and we're going to become less productive because of your inability to articulate the direction. Again, coming back to like the leadership role of this is, if you do not understand the dynamic of this team and you haven't given your team the opportunity to either, I'm going to put them in a situation where it's an opportunity for them to raise their floor. Let's see how they do. I'm going to put them up over here and see if they can raise their ceiling. Let's see how they do. And if I get to the point where I've got a high floor individual and they're just up against their ceiling, but they're happy and we're happy, cool. We gave them a shot. The visionary parts didn't really spark anything with them or with us. So let's not ask them to do that. And I'll wrap that statement up with another story where, similar to your comment about, finding a software developer and being like, this person needs to be a manager. They're just really good. And I was at an organization where that exact thing happened. A really, really strong developer who seemed to have good, like, people skills and soft skills and all these things that we say, like, oh, that's like the super developer of the people who have like really, really good high floor development skills, but they also have all these, quote unquote soft skills. So started putting them higher. Now you manage people. Well, now you're over an entire piece of the organization. Well, now you're also helping the sales team as being like the technology, genius of the team, right? A year of that, managing the sales calls, joining the meetings, doing the pre-sales stuff, all of these things. And finally, one day he's like, I don't know if I want to work here no more. I'm like, well, why, man? It seems like you're really good. Like, you're good at this stuff. I can't tell you how much I really hate having to do all of these things that aren't interesting to me. And when I'm put in a lot of these roles that you've asked me to do, like, I literally throw up before the calls and I'm sick to my stomach when we're done, because the amount of anxiety and stress that it gives me is overwhelming to me. And I just can't do it anymore. And we're like, well, okay, well, you don't need to do that. Like, that's my response was like, we can take that off your plate. Like, this doesn't have to. I didn't know, like, nobody knew that this was producing so much angst to be asked in some ways to go chase a high ceiling that you didn't want to pursue yourself. And it made you so uncomfortable that it made you physically ill. And his response was, it's just kind of too late. Like, I'm actually like so burned out at this point that the thought of like going in and doing this anymore is depressing to me. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. I just want to go back to being the really high floor, high performance individual that just knocks stuff out on a daily basis. That's where I was happiest. And yet so often we kind of nudge people out of their comfort zone just to see. But if we don't recognize exactly what's happening when we do that, we might be putting somebody in a position to fail and really sabotaging what would have been a really, really valuable team member by putting them in a position where they just didn't fit and they didn't know or even feel comfortable enough to say like, hey, I want to raise my hand here and just be like, I know you guys really want me to have this high ceiling and all, but that's not my thing. Like, I don't really want to do that. For different people, you look at that and be like, I didn't even consider maybe that was a thing. We have to be really aware of that, because sure, we're going to have people on the team who are low performers, who don't have a lot of dreams and vision to bring to the organization. And so they don't fit. And you're like, this person just doesn't fit in our company. Maybe they'll go find their ceiling or their floor somewhere else, but it never happened here. However, for those people who've attained the high floor, or who have the high ceiling and their floor hasn't caught up yet, you got to be really careful about where you put those people and what you put on their plate, because you might spoil the most valuable thing that they bring to the organization because you think that they should be on a different track than they are.
That's an incredible, one, that's wild that you are that punishing to an individual that you're making them physically sick to go do their job. So I don't know how you sleep at night, man. That's brutal. But
to be fair, I did not do that. I was the recipient of the feedback and was trying to save the situation. But
that's my takeaway from the conversation. Jonathan will make you puke.
That's fine. Revisionist history.
But outside of the illness, which I would hope no leader or person worth their salt is actively trying to make people ill with the work that they are doing every day. What a great example of just what's at stake, what the potential costs are, not only just at that human level, but obviously when it comes to, your projects and your goals for the company, for the team, for your, your work or whatever. It's an incredibly great example of just what's at stake across that full spectrum of characters involved in that. And the only way you get to uncover those insights, to your point, is you have to be, as a leader or a part of a leadership team, being willing to have this conversation and being willing to assess what's going on around you. And if need be, being the squeaky wheel at that senior leadership level of going, hey, guys and gals, I think we got to pause for a minute and have a conversation like this with our team, because I think there are some real things at stake right now. That's a worthwhile exercise. I could tell you, and maybe this is a little bit of a flip side story, thinking of a time when I was a part of a team that had recently been acquired at the top of a calendar year. So January 1, we're hitting the ground running as part of a new organization. And the mandate, the vision from the new ownership team was, come Memorial Day weekend, we're going to have, right now, you essentially have two market applications in the market. We're going to have 5 come Memorial Day weekend. 3 of those are going to be, video applications. We didn't historically do video, so we're going to develop new technology to do video. We were primarily audio. And by the way, part of what we're going to do on that Memorial Day weekend is we are going to live stream 3 music festivals at 3 different places around the country. Rock on the Range in the Gulf Coast. Rock on the Range in Columbus, Ohio. Hangout Fest up the Gulf Coast. And EDC Vegas. That's what it was. EDC Vegas that year. All going over the weekend. It was just, the scope of what we were being asked to achieve was enormous. And the team that was being asked to do it was incredibly small. And I got to say, and this is why I thought of this, is your ability to have a conversation like that with a team member, or your ability to have the self-discipline as a leader to know that you can't just keep moving the goalposts of the vision every day, because that's so frenetic that causes chaos amongst the team. Those things are only possible if you've been able to really build trust, and to have an element of trust amongst the people you're sort of sitting with allows a lot of this stuff to even be possible in the first place. And that team that, I was a part of at the time, that ended up being able to hit our goals and hit the ground running across that first quarter of that calendar year, a few months, and did the work, got the applications shipped, got them into the market, ran 72 hours straight of live streaming music content over that whole festival weekend. And it worked. It didn't fall over. The team that did it was as diverse as you could imagine, but we trusted each other. We trusted that not necessarily the senior most, leadership layer that was coming in had everything right, but you could look to the guy or the gal to your left or your right. And you're like, I don't know everything that you know, but boy, do I trust you. And it was really fun. It was high stress. We had a lot at stake, I mean, granted, we're not curing cancer or saving kids from burning buildings or any of that stuff, but it felt high stakes, and it was a really good time when you had enough trust in the people that were around you to kind of allow them to be who they naturally were. High floors, high ceilings, low ceilings, but collectively everybody was bought in. And there was enough of a goal that everyone could see. So there's that kind of like, are we articulating the vision clearly? That everybody could just go, yeah, I see it. Let's go. And you kind of showed up every day. And it's a lot of that same enjoyment as you're talking about basketball as the example. It's that feeling when you are kind of on a team where everyone plays a collective part, different roles, but suddenly it's fluid and everything's moving kind of gracefully around the court or around the diamond or whatever it might be, because we're all kind of playing our part. That's pretty sweet. That's actually a really good time. And I think that's kind of another thing that comes to mind for me is like the example of what's it cost if we're not thoughtful about this topic and trying to put real energy to explore it for ourselves and our teams. But also the potential upside of doing this is we don't need a whole bunch of people that look like us on the team. We don't need a whole bunch of Michael Jordans on the team. And if we're able to kind of do a lap around our teams and have these types of conversations, the potential upside, not only can we achieve big things, we can have a pretty good time doing it, because it is just kind of fun to throw the ball to somebody who isn't you and watch what they do with the ball. And that only is possible, obviously by exploring this topic the way I think we're talking about it today, but assuming you've been able to build a foundation of trust amongst your organization where people are showing up as themselves to play their part. And it doesn't feel risky. They feel secure enough in doing it that they're not going to get whacked or clipped or cut down by just behaving the way that they believe they can behave best as it applies to the project or the thing you're trying to do. It's just a good time.
Yeah. And I think, and part of that, just even calling back to the, if you force people to play out of position because you think you understand kind of where they want to go or where their comfort zone is or what they aspire to be, it's not fun, right? Like, I mean, we might not all be throwing up before the meeting, but might feel like it. Maybe, maybe we're not sleeping as well at night. Maybe we're not as happy with what we're doing at work. And it really does come down to that, some of it, we kind of can lump this into almost like a chemistry vibe, right? Which is like, I got to get exactly the right ingredients here. And if I do it, the team will embrace the vision. They'll bring new ideas to the table and they'll get shit done all at the same time and be happy doing it. Like, this is fun. Like, when I'm working next to somebody who, loves digging ditches. And that's actually the thing I hate. But boy, I love putting the electrical lines down in there once we got it done. That's my jam. And it's like, okay, so I need to match these people up, right? Who's laying line, who's digging ditches. Like, let's make sure I don't have them mixed up. And I've got one person who hates doing this thing, another person who hates doing this thing. And that's exactly the role we gave them is, we're forcing pieces to fit in places they just don't fit. It's very easy to kind of do these broad assessments of like why things don't work and like why we're unhappy and like why do we have, friction in the organization somewhere. And sometimes, it's not a cure-all. But if you can look across your organization, you can understand all the different players that are involved, including yourself and the leadership maybe that's above you. You can assemble those ingredients in a way that makes success not only more achievable and more fun, but at an order of magnitude that was way higher than you maybe even thought possible, because the pieces fit together so nicely. And also, if you look across that and you realize you've got imbalance and you've already kind of tried to push people to see, can I raise their floor? Can I raise their ceiling? And then they just kind of, that's where they are. I've got this as the team I've got. You may need to mix it up. You may need to bring in another player that starts to fill that role. You may need to juggle the teams a little bit and make sure that you got the right mix. If I've got 3 teams, do I have the right mix of all 3 teams? Or do I have a whole bunch of high ceilings over here and a whole bunch of high floors over here and neither team is being successful? Like, that might be an indicator of being like, this might be the thing. Like, we get into the, org changes all the time, which can feel like whiplash to a lot of people. But if you're doing it with purpose and you're putting people kind of in the right role, and then suddenly they're more comfortable and more performant, and they trust the people around them because they're doing the things they don't like to do or don't fancy themselves as being really good at, those teams just move fast and they deliver, right? Like they're making progress and they're achieving their goals. And if they're struggling to achieve their goals, they're finding ways around it. And then they're continuing to move. And they don't tend to get log jammed, and they don't tend to get stuck, and they don't tend to just come back with nothing but excuses. They actually go hit the mark, and they celebrate it amongst themselves, and they're celebrating the organization. And we can make these things happen by being more purposeful about understanding everybody's role and their trajectory that they're on, so that not only do we achieve the financial and corporate success that we're all chasing, but people get to go home at night and be like, I had a good day at work today. And I kind of look forward to going tomorrow too. And I really like working with Jaime. He's always got all these really great ideas. And nothing makes me happier than hitting the deadline that we set, knowing that that was the right thing to do. And man, that's when work is awesome.
1,000%. I feel like we're closing in on the ending here. That feels like, that's incredibly valuable for me to hear. That just kind of had my head just do a loop right there at the end as thinking about the processes, I would want to bring to the table tomorrow, things that I'm sitting there kind of going, gosh, I actually haven't taken the time with even my own teams around some of these areas that you're talking about. That's insanely helpful. I think what I would maybe pile on to that is, if you are a part of a team and you're going, I'm trying to be this type of person, please don't sit around and just wait for the leadership team to deliver all of this for you. There's a lot you can do just as a member of a team on your own if you take a proactive stance to do it. I would say do that self-audit, try to figure out where you might stack in this matrix. Look around you, who's to your left, who's to your right, where might they land on the matrix, and where can you partner up? Where can you seek out opportunity to connect with some of those other individuals and start to challenge yourself in that same exact way? And in tandem, I always tell this to new folks, especially people who are a little bit junior on the team. Organizations are often hesitant to just unlock more salary and compensation, but they are often very open to unlocking additional responsibility. Look for opportunities to take things on. If you want to start signaling that you have untapped potential or the ability or the desire to level up in certain ways, start looking around for things that you might be able to own and drive, even if you don't have the perfect playbook. In fact, I would encourage you to say, I don't have the perfect playbook, but I'm really interested in getting it because I think I could be effective here. A lot of organizations are happy to assign extra responsibility to folks. I would say that's definitely a worthwhile area just to explore. So, I just want to kind of bolt that on as well, thinking if someone's listening going, well, I'm kind of like a part of the team. And I'm not really sure, the leadership layer is going to show up the way you guys are talking about. Like, so what am I going to do? Don't sit around and wait for it to happen too. There are lots of areas you can start to poke at around this topic that start to signal the kind of, person you aspire to be. And you can start to signal some of those things, and absolutely look to your left and look to your right and realize that there's probably a lot of opportunity for you to level up in the areas that you feel like are worth leveling up in. But step one, just like you and I were talking about before, if you're going to go, you've decided to go buy the self-help book to go help you grow in an area, step one is walking into the self-help aisle, is intentionally deciding that you're ready to level up and grow. And I think that's actually somewhat in short supply in many situations, is individuals or teams just deciding that they want to level up in this particular area. And I hope that changes.
My final point on that, I think, just teeing off of what you said, is that people with high ceilings and low floors, and you aspire to be a bigger cog in the team machine, and to your point, leadership maybe hasn't kind of identified this yet. If you find the other people who are high ceiling, high floors, they often will welcome you in. They celebrate the dreamer who hasn't quite figured all the rest of it out yet. And same with the high floor folks. If your goal is to get your floor up close to your ceiling and then do great work in perpetuity, finding those people who've already accomplished that on your team and learning from them and kind of drafting off them you'll find that those are the people who are going to bring you in. They're going to trust you. They're going to recommend that you do more of those things because they see what you're trying to be, because they can relate to it. That's who they are. And that's where you can really get a win. Like, to your point, everybody's willing to dole out responsibility as long as you can prove you can handle it, right? And you can take it on and then earn that that promotion, that payday, whatever you might be chasing. But find those people in your organization, in your team especially, who are filling the role that you really want to fill, and you're just not quite there yet for one reason or another. But that's a great way to exhibit to your team, to your leadership, to everything else, is say, hey, Jaime, I see that you're doing all these things. I also want to do those things. And I'd love to learn from you, even if I have to put in some extra time here and there or whatever. Let me be part of this and let me carry some of that water, and let's see what happens. And that's when people really start to step up, and it's rewarding for both people in that scenario. And it doesn't require leadership to just uncover all the diamonds in the rough on their own. It lets you shine over there across the table in a way that compels them to notice you and give you opportunities.
That's huge. I love hearing it phrased that way. Brother, I think that's the show. I think that's the show. Thank you, as always, for making time to sit on the line and have a conversation. If you are enjoying any part of this pod, please check the show notes. You can connect with me. You can connect with Jonathan. There are links to both of our work, and you can find us online. There's also a link to leave us a question. If anything that we've talked about today has sparked a thought, a question, a comment, leave us a note. We're trying to incorporate some of these audio messages. Thank you for those who have left us some notes. It looks like we'll be able to include some of those in shows in the future, but link in the show notes. Definitely check it out. Jonathan, it's always good to see you, man. I'm Jaime.
I'm Jonathan.
This is Slackers. Thank you for taking time with the show. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.